All right, in this video, I want to walk you through the DBQ rubric, again, to show you how similar it is to the long essay rubric, but also to show you the expectations for using the documents. So the first two categories, A and B, are essentially identical to the LEQ. You need a thesis or a claim that responds to the prompt with a historically defensible argument, all right, something that shows a knowledge of history, and it should establish a line of reasoning. It shouldn't just restate the question. It should begin to answer, how or why what you're saying is the case. So no real difference there. Remember, a well-developed thesis usually is broken down into two, maybe three, but two subtopics is usually enough. Now, this first DBQ is a continuity and change over time essay. So you could certainly look at the way, one thing is changing and yet another is staying the same. You could do it that way. Or you might frame it where your first subtopic sentence is kind of talking about the way things are at the beginning of the time period. And then if there's a turning point, your second sentence could kind of start there and say, and then it changed in this direction. There's a lot of ways of doing it, but we don't want a simple thesis that just says, ideas about American independence changed between 1763 and 83. Well, how? Why? Nor do we want to cram a bunch of ideas into one really long sentence. Okay, so nothing has changed there. Also, you need to provide contextualization, and you can pretty much do it the way you would do it in an LEQ. You can talk about the situation before the time period, after the time period. You could talk about other developments that are going on at the same time and how they affect this issue. Again, nothing has changed so far. Those 2 points are the same. All right. I'm going to skip past the evidence part for a minute and show you one more thing that is the same, and that is the complex understanding point. All right. So again, 1 point for demonstrating a complex understanding of the historical evidence, and the ways of doing that are, again, the same as the long essay. So, with continuity and change, if you are showing both continuity and change, you can earn this point. And like I said, if you watch the video introducing you to the DBQ, some of these documents are, kind of interesting. They're bringing in varying perspectives. Some might conform to your thesis as you've laid it out, and others might challenge that. So if you can effectively use the documents that challenge it to kind of show that, well, things aren't as simple as they may appear, that also could demonstrate a complex understanding. But now let's talk about the documents or the evidence and see where we're earning our points. So 3 points come from the evidence in your essay. And, we're going to look at kind of the low bar of this, and then I'm going to tell you we're not aiming for the low bar, and I'll point out where we are aiming. But you do earn 1 point if you effectively use the content of at least 3 of the 7 documents to address the topic of the prompt. Now, very important point. Using a document implies using it correctly. All right. And what I mean by that is, you understand what the document is saying. You kind of understand it in its relation to the prompt. That's what we mean by saying you've used a document to address the topic of the prompt. Sometimes you misinterpret a document. You read it wrong, and that happens under the pressure of the exam. Now, hopefully not often and not at all, but if you're saying, well, I'm aiming low, I just want to get one of these points, I'm just going to use 3 documents, you better hope you use those 3 correctly, because if you only use 2 correctly, you've got no points. So we don't aim there, right? Now it says, or you get 2 points, and this is where we're aiming, by using at least 6 documents correctly. So remember, there are only a total of 7. They pretty much want you to use them all. And that really is where we're aiming. You're aiming to use all these documents. Now, 1 or 2 may be used as part of your complex understanding. That's fine, all right? They're being used. But you really want to use them all. Do not start out and say, well, I only have to use 6, so I'm going to eliminate 1 off the bat. Maybe if you watch the other video or you've looked at this DBQ, you're like, a photograph of a teapot, I don't get that. What am I supposed to do with that? I'm not going to use it. Well, here's why you don't want to do that. Because again, if you only use 6, but only 5 correctly, then you're back down to that 1 point, right? You're not even close to the 2 points. So let's try to use them all, and then that gives us a little bit of margin of error if we kind of goofed on one, all right? Now, also, it says that you use these to support your argument. That's part of that analysis we talk about. You're not just stating what the document's about, but you're using that to now support the thesis, the claim that you are making. That's the key to getting 2 points. Again, correctly, effectively with all of these documents. So that's what we're aiming to do. All right, so we're at 2 points now. The third point is from using what they call evidence beyond the documents, or what I commonly call outside evidence outside the documents. It says you need to use at least 1 additional piece of specific historical evidence that's not in the documents themselves and is relevant to your argument, your claim about the prompt. So that is why when you first start to think about the essay, first start to think about the prompt, you want to start to think about evidence too. What are some of the key pieces of evidence in this time period that I might use? And then if you encounter them in the documents, okay, can't use that one, but maybe you've got something else. That says at least 1. So we want to aim for at least 2, because if we don't do it effectively and we only have 1, we're missing this point. And it is not simply a reference. It can't be a little throw-in, oh yeah, and there was the coercive acts. Okay, what about them, right? Just like for the documents, the 6 documents that we're going to try to use effectively, we need this additional piece of evidence to be described a little bit. We need to explain how or why it supports our claim, right? We need to develop it quite a bit in order to earn this point. Now, it doesn't necessarily get its own paragraph. I guess it could, but most likely it's going to be several sentences of using this piece of evidence as well. So, it could fit in anywhere in your essay. Maybe it does go nicely and naturally with one of the documents, and so you're kind of working it in with that. That's fine, okay? All right, there's one more point as far as the documents are concerned, and it's found here in Part D. It says, for at least 3 of the documents, you must explain how or why the documents, and here's our CAP acronym. Of course, they have them a little bit out of order, but they start with point of view, purpose, so there's our 2 Ps. What we're calling contextualization, they are calling historical situation, but don't worry, it's the same thing. You grasp the idea. And or audience. So one of those 4 ways of sourcing you need to use for at least 3 of the 6 or 7 documents that you're using in the essay. And again, I'm going to sound like a broken record. We want to do this for more than 3. I mean, ideally for all of them, but aim for 4, maybe 5 of the documents that you're trying to source, so that if you fall flat once, you're still okay, all right? And note well, explains how or why the document's context, audience, purpose is relevant to the argument. So you're not just saying, well, Samuel Adams, he was a member of the Sons of Liberty, so he didn't like Britain to begin with. Okay, that is his point of view. But why does that matter? Why is that relevant to the argument you're trying to make? Okay, so in another video, I will share with you how to properly do this, how to write your sentences when you're sourcing to be sure that you're earning this point. Okay, all right, so that's your walk through the rubric. Again, there are a total of 7 points. Many of them are very similar to what we see in the long essay, but a lot of them or a few of them are unique to the documents and to sourcing the documents. And that's kind of the key, the key difference in a DBQ essay.